very active members of this citizen chamber in the European Union. Pervenche was the former president of the European movement in France and chair of the economic committee and now chair of the employment and social affairs committee. And when we had that financial crisis, which was then an economic crisis and later a social crisis, the parliament decided to make a report. And Pervenche is the rapporteur of the special committee of social, financial and economic crisis, and she has delivered something that is quite seldom in the parliament. More than 200 proposals. It's the most comprehensive report that we will vote when? Wednesday. On Wednesday, in Strasbourg next week. So I have read it and I must say bravo, bravo. This is a very comprehensive approach to policy making in the EU, and Pervenche, you have the floor to give us some elements, not all the 200, but some of the things you think is so important to have a social Europe, please.
Thank you. Well, following your introduction, first of course I want to thank everyone to be here in this, we call it a seminar, but I think it's important on those topics also to have seminars. Reacting to your introduction, I would just maybe focus on 2 points. I'm not going to tell you the whole story of the report because it went through 1,025 amendments, so you can imagine how it was challenging to end up with something that will, I hope, will be voted on Wednesday. But for me, there were 2 very strong ideas in this report I wanted to convey. And finally, I think I was able to convey only one of them. The first one is, maybe I was going through the report with a hidden agenda, but still it was there. Because I managed through 200 proposals only to use once the word growth. But finally, the final report will look quite different. Because the time was not there, even after this crisis, to have the strong battle that referred to the first point that was addressed by Pierre Calam. And for me, it is very disappointing. Because after this crisis, you're not allowed to say that this crisis is the result of a financiarization of economy, of an unbalanced situation where profit doesn't look as a result and can run on its own agenda without delivering the social agenda where it should deliver. And this part of the report has been taken off by the compromises. I have to apologize for this, but it means it's still an open battle for us. My trick in the report to get around this issue was to ask for long-term investment creating jobs. And this is not a hypocrite agenda. It is just to realize that at this stage of the situation in the EU, what we need is to implement what we have wisely elaborated during the spring 2007 when we said we need, and I must say I have a regret in that time because I very much applaud what was concluded in spring 2007, first on reduction of energy dependency, second on environment behavior or development. But I think at that stage already we missed the point about the third E, which should have been employment. And I think we should have been more vocal at that time. But nevertheless, I think the strategy for another, let's be proud of the word, another model of development. To go beyond the contradiction where we are. And of course, when I had this debate with my friend Democrat in the US, they don't even understand what I'm speaking about. And if you look at the origin of this crisis, before it bursted in August 2007, I attended hundreds, or maybe less, but at least more than 10 seminars, symposium, and so on about global imbalances. What is global imbalances? It is a strategy of credit consumption in the US financed by outsourcing of production. And if you're not going to address this topic, you're not going to address the issue of solidarity, you're not going to be consistent. And now the whole, and even the Fed now is going on that line. Easing money and pushing for growth. I mean, I'm not an advocate, I've never been an advocate of the idea of a zero growth rate, because I think this doesn't address it addresses partly the proper issue. But this fundamental discussion on the nature of our development, of our way of life, is not addressed following this crisis. So I don't know when it will be addressed. And it is a critical point. And here, their trick, the one I tried to use in the report didn't work, but there's another one I think we could or we should try to work out, which is the alternative indicators. We've been discussing this for years now, but as long as the main indicators is growth, you're not going to change anything. And you're not going to be able to organize the reallocation of resources and to redefine public spending or private investment. I'm not so sure, I know nothing about it because I'm a politician, so I don't know the detail of it. But my instinct is that we should be courageous enough to say, okay, well, you know, sometimes when you use the exchange rate, you put it in dollar and euro. Well, I would like to have it in GDP and the others. And for the 2020 strategy, I think this would be a very good opportunity to say, because there was a wording, we've been changing the method, but when you look consistently what's been changed, I'm not so sure there's so much. And this second trick, I think, is still a bit in the report, not as strong as it was in the reading, but still you can find it. And the second element, where there I was more successful, and that for me also relates with what Pierre Calmar has said about the Jacobin or the subsidiarity approach versus the multi-level approach. It is to say that, you know, in the EU, when you look at the whole debate we had in the convention, one of the cornerstones of the discussion was to define the competence of everybody. To have the bloc for the EU, the shared competence, the competence where you have associated activity and so on and so on. And it is still the mainstreaming of the action plan by the EU. But on top of this block of competence approach, there's been one other approach that has even worsened this situation about block competence. It is the way the Commission has interpreted her contribution to action when there was shared competence with member states. Because then in this case, the EU, instead of doing its job on these fields, for example, social cohesion, well, social cohesion is not a good example, but on most of the shared competence, the EU would go for definition of the element of these competence regarding the functioning of internal market. And the problem we have is that internal